Wholesale Fanatics, Verdexes here. This video we're going to show you the lookup formula and how it compares to the VLOOKUP formula. So there's a few different kinds of lookups, but I'm going to specifically go over this lookup. Lookup, that's it. So the lookup function works exactly how you would think, finding one piece of information within another set of information. Just like the VLOOKUP, just like the HLOOKUP, and the XLOOKUP that we've all talked about at some point. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through just the lookup and how it compares, right? Just as I was saying. So it's going to seem very simple at first, but I want to point out why it's kind of flawed and why it's not as popular as the VLOOKUP. So here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with just finding one, right? So equals lookup, and then the lookup value. Look up the vector and the lookup array. You see how there's two here? They're essentially the same thing. So looking at either the array or the lookup vector, we're just going to do one column for this. And we're just going to go ahead and highlight F4. And I'm not going to show the result vector. So the result vector would just be kind of through a VLOOKUP. It shows what column you want it to return. So I'm just going to skip that. You notice how it has the bracket, so that's an optional aspect. So I'm just trying to tell it to find one. And so it only fills out two criteria here. That's all you need, and it finds it. Same thing with Marcia, right? So if we do a lookup, look up the vector. So this is the table that we're trying to find. And that's Marcia. It finds it, right? It's doing its job as a lookup. I'm going to skip Mary because Mary's not actually on here, but I'm going to come back to that, and I want to show you exactly what makes the difference between this lookup and a VLOOKUP. So I'm going to jump down to who is employee number 4. So kind of as I was saying, if you're doing a VLOOKUP, right? So VLOOKUP, look up the value, and if I'm trying to see who it is, let's lock that in. Column 2, right? Because that's the second column of the table we're highlighting. And the range lookup false. Notice the true and the false. I'm going to distinguish that in a minute. So true being approximate and false. I usually go with false for VLOOKUP. And it finds Sarah, right? That's how it's doing its job. So with the lookup for 4, what you can actually do in this situation, I can actually just highlight both columns, and that's it. And I want it'll return on the column I stop on. So if you can see that, right? So I highlighted from B to C, and it returned the second column after it found 4. So that's pretty useful, right? So I didn't have to type in what column I wanted to return. I just highlighted up to the point I wanted it to return. So we can try that again with Marcia here. And our hobby. So notice again, I did by 2. I'm only those 2 criteria I'm filling in. And look, it's skydive, so that was correct. And then the last one. Looking up 5. And I'll highlight the third column here, right? And cook. So that came out correct. So here's another situation that with the VLOOKUP is flawed, where it can't look left of what you're looking for, right? So if I tried to do VLOOKUP Tom in this table array, and if I tried to write column 1, because it's in the first column, right? Oops, sorry, and I want to make it false. NA, right? It can't look back. So what the lookup can do, look up the value. Now I can highlight this whole thing, right? Find that. And now this result vector, I can just go ahead and I can highlight this column. So what's the result vector being the output? And then just hit enter. So our output became 3, right? So in this situation, the lookup can actually look back, right? So let's do that one more time. So equals lookup. Look up the value. Where are we trying to find it, right? So we can just highlight this one column. Because it won't work if you try to do highlight like this, right? So if I try to highlight backwards, it's not going to work in this table. So I'll even just show you that. So it won't look back like that, right? So if we do look up the value, that's the table we're trying to find the value. And when it's found, what is the output we want to show? So we can use this result vector as the output, and we got 3, right, for Tom. So now it looks pretty good, right? Like, why aren't more people using the lookup function? Here's why. So notice that when I was using the VLOOKUP before, right, let me just do it again. Lookup value, table array, 2, and then true and false, right? So I always want to use a VLOOKUP. I want to use false because I want to make sure that what I'm looking for is exactly it. If I do true, it kind of just comes up with an answer. So I don't really want that to happen. So that is where the lookup is flawed, because the thing is, when you use a lookup, the default is true, meaning it's the approximate match. So if I do true for this, so that, well, that's not going to work. So I got to actually expand, right? Because 4 wasn't in the first column here. So that worked out fine because it actually could find the answer. But what about in a situation where, like, going back to Mary now? If I do a VLOOKUP, and now you go into this table array, I know Mary's not in there. Just do 1. If I do true, you see it gives me what it thinks is the closest answer to Mary. So, but I know that Mary's not in there, so that's why this is flawed. Like, I don't understand why I would want an approximate answer. I want to make sure that what I'm looking for is in there, or if it isn't, I need to find something. You know, I need to know that it's not there. So watch what happens when I do the lookup. Just highlighting that table. And I'm just going to leave that closed. And it gives me the same answer, right? So that's what you need to be aware of when you're using the lookup. It tries to find an approximate answer by default. So I'll try this for employee 6. There's no employee 6 here, right? So let's just highlight that. Actually, so we're going to try to do who, right? So let's do 2 columns. And it gives me Phil as that's what it thinks is the closest answer to 6, but it should just be there is no 6. So hopefully that is clear to you guys why the lookup isn't that popular. Here's another drawback I want to point out as well. So I'm going to use a VLOOKUP here on this employee ID, and then I'm going to try to find it. I'm going to make my output this employee name here, right? So if I do equals VLOOKUP, just these 2 tables, lock it in. Second column, right? The employee name is my output. False for exact. Double click all the way down. Finds everything I'm looking for. Great. Now what happens when I do the lookup? So the reason I wanted to show you the VLOOKUP was to show you that there was nothing missing here. Every employee ID was found here. So lookup vector. Phil, found that fine. But look at that. Some NAs showing up. So why did that happen? Another reason this is kind of flawed is the thing is the lookup needs to be sorted. It needs to be in a particular order from low to high. It goes in, so it looks in ascending order, right? So the fact is that there's some numbers here. It's showing that this is actually a lower number than, say, Marsh up here, this employee ID. So to fix this, I should do Control A, and my alt shortcut for sorting is Alt A, S, and I'm going to just sort by the employee ID. And look at that. So as soon as it's sorted properly, then everything fills in correctly. So that's pretty much it for the walkthrough. It can be helpful in some situations, but the fact of the things I just showed you, that's what makes it kind of flawed and definitely not as popular as something like the VLOOKUP. But I hope this was helpful for you guys. Definitely show me some love with the likes if you did like this video and found it helpful. And don't forget to subscribe for some more content. Thank you guys so much again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.